Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Young and the Restless channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. The tension surrounding the Young and the Restless was already simmering beneath the surface, but now it feels as though a devastating storm may be quietly gathering around Nikki Newman. For weeks, emotional fractures have been spreading through the powerful Newman family, and just when it seemed the conflict could not grow any heavier, subtle warning signs began emerging that pointed toward something far more frightening than family drama. In the middle of all the chaos, Nikki suddenly finds herself battling something she cannot simply argue away or emotionally survive through sheer strength. The latest preview for the week of May 25th through May 29th reveals a deeply unsettling moment that instantly changes the emotional atmosphere surrounding her story. What first appears to be a simple headache quickly carries the weight of something darker, more dangerous, and potentially life-altering. As the camera closes in on Nikki's pain, viewers can feel the fear settling into the room before anyone even says a word. The moment unfolds with an eerie sense that this is not just another passing problem, but the beginning of a heartbreaking new chapter that could shake the entire Newman dynasty to its core. In the preview clip, Nikki clutches her head in visible agony while standing near Victoria Newman, and the pain on her face is impossible to ignore. Victoria's expression immediately shifts from concern to quiet alarm as she watches her mother struggle to stay composed. Nikki admits that she believed the headache had disappeared, only for it to return with even greater force, and there is something deeply unsettling in the way she says it. This is not portrayed as a minor inconvenience or a fleeting moment of exhaustion. The scene lingers just long enough to let the fear sink in, allowing the audience to feel how fragile Nikki suddenly seems beneath the strength she has carried for so many years. Even the atmosphere around the moment feels heavier, as though the walls themselves understand something serious may be unfolding. It becomes painfully clear that Nikki is not simply uncomfortable, she is suffering, and the people around her are beginning to realize they may be witnessing the early signs of a devastating medical crisis. Of course, there are many possible explanations for Nikki's worsening condition, and every one of them carries emotional weight. Her long history with multiple sclerosis immediately comes to mind, reminding viewers of the battles she has already endured throughout her life. On top of that, Nikki has been drowning in relentless emotional stress lately, pulled apart by the constant turmoil surrounding her family. Victor Newman has been consumed by anger and pride, refusing to soften even as the emotional distance between him and Nikki grows wider with each passing day. At the same time, the family has also been shaken by Nick Newman and his addiction struggles, creating yet another painful burden for Nikki to carry on her shoulders. The emotional exhaustion alone would be enough to break almost anyone, and yet the show's dramatic focus on these headaches suggests something far more alarming may be lurking beneath the surface. The fact that the series chose to spotlight Nikki's pain so prominently in a weekly preview feels intentional, almost like a warning to viewers that her condition is about to become the center of a major emotional storyline. As the headaches continue, the possibility grows that Nikki may no longer be able to simply push through the pain and pretend everything is fine. Her suffering appears severe enough that everyday life itself may become difficult unless she finds answers soon. Victoria, already shaken by what she witnessed, may become the person who finally urges Nikki to stop ignoring the symptoms and seek real medical help before things spiral out of control. That simple doctor's appointment could become the turning point that changes everything. The fear hanging over the storyline intensifies with the possibility that Nikki's symptoms may lead to a stunning diagnosis no one saw coming. A brain tumor, a neurological disorder, or some other serious brain-related illness could suddenly flip her entire world upside down in a matter of moments. The emotional impact of such a revelation would be enormous, not only for Nikki herself, but for every member of the Newman family who depends on her strength and presence. There is a growing sense that the headaches are not merely a symptom, but the first crack in a much larger emotional catastrophe waiting to explode. And perhaps the most emotionally devastating consequence of all would fall directly on Victor. For so long, Victor has buried himself in stubbornness, pride, and fury, refusing to bend even when it comes to the woman he loves most. Despite Nikki's years of loyalty and devotion, Victor has refused to apologize for his cruel behavior or invite her back to the ranch. Instead, he has doubled down on his anger, feeling personally betrayed because Nikki dared to side with Jack Abbott and openly condemn Victor's increasingly ruthless actions. The emotional divide between them has become colder and harsher with every confrontation, leaving Nikki isolated at a time when she may need love and support more than ever. Yet beneath Victor's hardened exterior, there has always been one undeniable truth. Nikki is the center of his world, whether he wants to admit it or not. If her life suddenly hangs in the balance because of a terrifying diagnosis, that emotional wall around Victor could finally come crashing down. The possibility of losing Nikki may force him to confront the painful reality that his anger, pride, and obsession with control mean nothing compared to the woman he cannot imagine living without. If Nikki's condition truly becomes life-threatening, the emotional transformation in Victor could be dramatic and profound. The man who once refused to listen may suddenly become desperate to save the woman he loves. Every grudge, every argument, and every bitter accusation could suddenly feel meaningless in the shadow of a potential tragedy. Victor may throw all his power and resources into securing the best doctors, the best treatments, and every possible chance for Nikki's survival. In those moments, viewers could see a softer side of Victor emerge again. A man stripped of ego and rage, focused only on protecting the person who has stood beside him through decades of heartbreak and triumph. The emotional intensity of watching Victor become attentive, protective, and remorseful could create some of the most powerful scenes the show has delivered in years. And perhaps, after all the pain Nikki has endured, Victor may finally offer the apology she deserved all along, not because pride allows it, but because the fear of losing her leaves him no other choice. As the coming episodes unfold, Nikki's mysterious headaches are set to move to the very center of the story, carrying with them an atmosphere of uncertainty, fear, and emotional reckoning. Every scene now feels layered with quiet dread, as though disaster may be approaching one painful step at a time. The Newman family has survived betrayals, power struggles, addictions, and heartbreak before, but this looming medical crisis threatens to hit them in a far more personal and devastating way. Nikki has always been one of the emotional anchors of the family, a woman whose resilience carried others through their darkest moments, and now she may be the one in desperate need of saving. The possibility that her health could deteriorate while old wounds remain unresolved only makes the storyline even more emotionally explosive. Love, regret, guilt, and fear are beginning to collide all at once, setting the stage for a dramatic emotional storm that could permanently change the lives of everyone around her. And as viewers wait anxiously to learn the truth behind Nikki's worsening condition, one heartbreaking question hangs over everything. Will Victor realize what truly matters before it is too late? The unsettling uncertainty surrounding Nikki's condition continues to grow heavier with each passing moment, as though the storyline itself is tightening around a truth that has yet to be revealed. What began as a seemingly simple, recurring headache has now evolved into something far more ominous, leaving both Nikki and those closest to her trapped in a rising wave of fear they cannot fully articulate. Every subtle wince, every pause in her speech, and every moment she presses her hand to her temple feels increasingly significant, as if the smallest detail might be pointing toward a much larger hidden crisis. The emotional weight in the Newman household becomes impossible to ignore, especially as Victoria watches her mother struggle in silence, torn between concern and helpless hope. There is a growing sense that time is no longer on their side, and that the answers they need may already be waiting in a direction no one wants to face. As Nikki's symptoms persist, the pressure builds toward a decision she can no longer avoid. What once could be dismissed as stress or exhaustion now demands medical attention, and the possibility of ignoring it any longer feels dangerously irresponsible. Victoria, deeply unsettled by what she has witnessed, becomes increasingly insistent that Nikki seek professional help, her concern slowly shifting into urgency as she refuses to let her mother suffer in silence. Their dynamic takes on a new emotional intensity as Nikki tries to maintain her composure while Victoria gently but firmly pushes her toward taking action. It is a fragile balance between a mother's instinct to stay strong and a daughter's desperate need to protect her. Beneath every exchanged word lies an unspoken fear that whatever is happening may already be more serious than either of them is prepared to admit. When Nikki finally considers the possibility of a medical consultation, the atmosphere shifts again, this time into something far more uncertain and vulnerable. The idea of facing a doctor, undergoing tests, and possibly hearing a life-altering diagnosis hangs over her like a shadow she cannot escape. The thought alone forces her to confront not just her physical symptoms, but the emotional reality she has been trying to outrun, that something inside her body may be changing in a way she cannot control. In that silence between worry and action, the storyline deepens its emotional grip, allowing viewers to feel the weight of every unspoken fear. Even the strongest characters, those who have weathered countless storms of betrayal and heartbreak, are shown here as fragile in the face of the unknown. And as Nikki takes her first steps towards seeking answers, the sense of inevitability becomes impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the broader emotional storm within the Newman family continues to ripple outward, amplifying the stakes of Nikki's condition. Victor's hardened stance remains a painful barrier between him and Nikki, a wall built from pride, resentment, and unresolved anger that neither seems willing to fully dismantle. Yet beneath his outward defiance, there are subtle cracks forming, especially as the possibility of something serious affecting Nikki begins to linger in the background of his thoughts. The idea that he might lose her forces a quiet but powerful shift in perspective, even if he refuses to acknowledge it openly. His world, so often governed by control and dominance, begins to feel slightly less certain, as though fate itself is challenging his authority in a way he cannot negotiate or command. As the emotional tension escalates, the possibility of a devastating diagnosis becomes more than just speculation. It transforms into a looming presence that shapes every interaction. If doctors uncover something as serious as a brain tumor or another neurological condition, the impact would not only redefine Nikki's future, but also permanently alter the fragile balance within the Newman family. The fear of such a revelation lingers in every moment she struggles with pain, turning ordinary conversations into emotionally charged exchanges filled with unspoken dread. Victoria's concern deepens into protective urgency. Nick's worries grow heavier as he grapples with his own personal struggles, and even Victor's anger begins to look increasingly fragile when placed against the potential of irreversible loss. It becomes clear that this is no longer just a health concern. It is a turning point that could reshape the entire emotional foundation of their lives. And as the story continues to unfold, the emotional spotlight remains firmly fixed on Nikki, whose quiet suffering now carries the weight of an entire family's fear. Every passing moment without answers only intensifies the tension, building anticipation for a revelation that feels both inevitable and heartbreaking. The narrative carefully tightens around her journey, suggesting that whatever diagnosis awaits may not only challenge her physically, but also force every member of her family to confront truths they have long avoided. In the midst of all this uncertainty, one powerful emotional thread stands out above the rest. The possibility that crisis, as devastating as it may be, could become the force that finally breaks through years of pride and distance. Whether it leads to healing, reconciliation, or heartbreak, Nikki's condition is no longer just a subplot. It is becoming the emotional center of a storm that promises to change everything. The uncertainty surrounding Nikki's condition continues to tighten its grip on the entire Newman family, as each passing moment without clear answers deepens the emotional strain. What once felt like an occasional discomfort has now evolved into a persistent and unsettling presence in her life, one that refuses to be ignored or explained away. The headaches return with a troubling consistency, striking at unexpected times and leaving Nikki visibly shaken, as though her own body is beginning to betray her without warning. Victoria stays close, watching every shift in her mother's expression and trying to balance reassurance with her growing fear that something far more serious is unfolding beneath the surface. The emotional atmosphere becomes increasingly suffocating, as if the family is standing on the edge of a revelation they are not ready to face. As Nikki struggles to maintain control over her daily life, the pain begins to interfere with even the simplest moments, making it impossible for her to continue pretending that everything is fine. The strength she has always relied on is slowly being tested in a way she cannot easily overcome, and each attempt to push through only highlights how vulnerable she has become. Victoria's concern transforms into determination, and she begins to take a more active role in insisting that Nikki prioritize her health above everything else. The dynamic between them grows more emotionally charged as Nikki resists the idea of making a medical appointment while simultaneously realizing she may no longer have a choice. Beneath their conversation lies a shared fear that neither of them fully voices. The possibility that waiting any longer could have consequences neither can reverse. At the same time, the emotional strain within the Newman family continues to echo in the background, adding even more weight to Nikki's fragile condition. Victor's ongoing refusal to reconcile with Nikki casts a long shadow over her already fragile state, leaving her emotionally isolated at a time when she needs support the most. His stubbornness remains unshaken on the surface, yet there are subtle moments where his composure seems less certain, as though the idea of losing Nikki is slowly working its way past his defenses. Nick's personal struggles add another layer of concern, as Nikki tries to hold her family together while silently falling apart herself. Every connection that once gave her strength now feels stretched thin, amplifying the emotional exhaustion she can no longer hide. The possibility of a serious diagnosis becomes more difficult to dismiss as the symptoms continue to persist and intensify. What might once have been attributed to stress or exhaustion now feels increasingly like a warning sign of something deeper and far more dangerous. The idea of a neurological condition such as a brain tumor or another serious brain-related illness lingers heavily over every scene, shaping the tone of every interaction without needing to be spoken aloud. The emotional tension builds steadily as the story moves closer to a point where avoidance is no longer possible and answers must finally be sought. Nikki's hesitation begins to clash with Victoria's urgency, creating a fragile emotional standoff rooted in love, fear, and the desperate need for certainty. If the worst fears are confirmed, the consequences would ripple far beyond Nikki's own life, shaking the very foundation of the Newman family. A life-threatening diagnosis would force every unresolved conflict, every unspoken regret, and every lingering wound to the surface at once. Victor, in particular, would be confronted with a reality he has spent years avoiding, that pride and anger lose all meaning when faced with the possibility of losing someone he truly loves. The idea of Nikki's life being in danger would challenge everything he believes about control, power, and emotional distance, forcing him into a position where action matters more than ego. It is within this potential crisis that the emotional core of the story begins to shift, suggesting that even the most hardened hearts can be reshaped by fear and loss. As the narrative continues to unfold, Nikki's condition becomes the central thread tying every relationship and conflict together, transforming a private health concern into a family-wide emotional reckoning. The tension builds not through dramatic outbursts, but through quiet moments filled with worry, hesitation, and unspoken dread. Each character reacts differently, yet all are drawn toward the same unavoidable truth. Something is changing, and it may already be too late to stop it from becoming life-altering. The story moves forward with a steady, tightening pressure, leading toward a revelation that promises to redefine not only Nikki's future, but the emotional direction of everyone connected to her.